All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What up, horrorheads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And we have been gone for a minute. October has just been,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's I feel like every October this happens. It's like we have this great plan for October and the wheels just come off. Like every October. We had the day where I had no voice and you had been like running for 3 straight days doing stuff.
Yeah.
Then we had the hurricane.
Boy.
And then last week, just a massive communication and screw up on my part between what movie we were doing when and forgetting to watch things. But anyway, we are here now. We are back. We've got a couple of Wednesdays left in October, and we are going to make the most of the spookiest of months as we finally get around to doing The Invisible Man.
Oh, yeah.
Kinda. It's not the one we keep thinking we're going to do, but we are doing The Invisible Man from 2020. You could call it a remake. You could call it a reimagining. You could just call it just another Invisible Man movie. But Dave, what did you think about this one?
This one came out at a really interesting time because we were in the midst of COVID when this movie came out. And it did not have a theatrical release. It went straight to streaming. Yeah. And so I'll always remember when this movie was released because I remember not being excited about very much in that time. And like there was Doom Eternal and there was Invisible Man. Like that's it. That's COVID. So I remember that Stephanie, my wife, was really, really wanting to see this thing. And I was like, oh shit. Well, it's not very often that, she tells me she likes horror, but it's not very often that she's that excited about seeing a horror movie. And I was like, all right, well, I was already in. You say Invisible Man, I'm in.
Right.
But then I actually saw the thing and it was so much more and so much better than I ever could have imagined it could have been. Whatever I had in my mind, it was not that, and I was so grateful for it. I think that it is one of the most singularly brilliant horror movies ever made. And I realized that I'm like, I'm not bearing the lead here. I fucking love this movie. I think that it is maybe in the top 10 greatest horror movies of the last 10 years.
Wow. Okay. I'm not quite that big on it. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. When we get to talking about story, I've got some little nitpicky things that kind of bothered me, but we'll get into those with story. Overall, I did enjoy it. I think they did a really good job with it. Now, I have still never seen like the original old school Invisible Man. I've seen Hollow Man. I've seen this one now. I've read the H.G. Wells book. But I've never actually seen the old school, guy with his head wrapped up Invisible Man. So I went into it not really expecting anything because I was like, okay, with my experience being Hollow Man and reading the book written in what, like 18 something,
something
right?
Like that.
Yeah. I was like, I know that they're going to have to change it from that. And so I went in with no expectations and immediately kind of got the vibe of where they were going to go with it. And those things played out really well. I think that it was really smartly done. They avoided one major pitfall that I was afraid they were going to run into that I'll get to. I think that the way they told the story, the way it kind of all played out, I think that they did a really good job with it. I think that this idea of making the Invisible Man seem like something attainable through modern technology was a really good idea. So often the idea of invisibility is something that it's a little beyond the pale. Like, you just got to accept that somehow they turn themselves invisible. I
Right.
think that they did a really smart idea of making this seem like something that wasn't too absurd. Like, oh no, he's a world leader in optics. Optics makes things you can see and can't see. Like, I get that. I understand that. I think they did a really good job with that. But the tension of this movie,
That really is.
holy shit. Like, that is almost all of the scare in this movie, is how nonstop tense it is. This movie is one big tight muscle. From the shots of just nothing. So, but the movie's called The Invisible Man. You know that there's probably something there. So you're just intently staring, to the scenes that's Elizabeth Moss saying nothing. So you're constantly you're doing the thing where you're trying to see the entire screen at
Yeah.
one time. You're looking for a sleeve to rustle on those clothes hanging over there on the hanger. You're looking for just a little discrepancy in the way the rain's falling or the water's flowing from the faucet. That stuff made this movie very scary. I found myself having to do the thing where you occasionally like, oh, I don't know when the last time
have
I
to breathe.
breathed was.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I did really enjoy it. Now, like I said, obviously not to the level that you did, and we'll get into that. But I mean, I thought it was good. It was a good, fun watch last night. So I'm not mad at it.
I mean, I imagine that's where most people will go. I think I love this. I'm not gonna say I think I love this movie too much, but I think I love this movie more than most probably do.
Right.
But let's find out if the story is part of what you enjoyed in this. So in a section we're calling "What exactly are you trying to hide?" Did the story itself, like not the Invisible Man aspect of it, but the story of Elizabeth Moss in here, did that work for you?
Yes. I think that 100% yes. I think that the way that they sold this, where we just kind of get started off in the action with Elizabeth Moss trying to run away, so we immediately, you're under this impression that she's trying to get out of an abusive relationship, which, you're pretty much sold on right away when the dude punches through the window to get at her, right? You're like, oh, okay, yeah, you should run away in the middle of the night. That stuff was good, but then the idea of the fact that we weren't 100% sure, right? Like, you're 98% sure that the Invisible Man is around all the time,
Right.
from a certain point in this movie. But the fact that we're not 100% sure until well into this movie, and you get a lot of time where you are just trying to figure out, like, is she like going crazy? Is she
Yeah.
just, when Aldous Hodge is like, you can't let Adrian haunt you forever, because he will if you let him. So you start to have those moments where you're like, I know it's called The Invisible Man, but did they flip it up on me and he's invisible because he's not actually there because he committed suicide? Again, the
Right.
tension of all of that is fantastic. The way that you're constantly guessing, because there are plenty of those wide shots with no characters in them where nothing happens. And so you do start to feel like maybe I'm getting the long con here, and he's not going to be there. But then you start thinking back, you're like, no, world leader in optics. Like, there was some weird stuff in that room she went to in the beginning. And you're always trying to convince yourself that he's there. This is a movie that does a great job of pulling you into the movie. It makes you part of it. You're living through Celia's, like, what might be psychosis, what might be, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're after you. They're not after you, right? And you kind of get sucked into that really hardcore. and I loved that. I think that they did a really good job with that. The relationships between some of the people really sold how well this thing worked. I think that the story here probably is the biggest selling point in this movie, honestly.
That's it for me, to be honest. I love what they did with the Invisible Man, and I thought that the characters were all incredibly well defined. Cinematography is just gorgeous. I mean, this is one of the
Yes.
best shot movies in the genre, I think. But also, I mean, Lee Whannell's not new to this. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
the guy's been making movies for 20 years at this point, and every one is a fucking, runaway hit. So, um, for me, it's about the story, and it's because I see this as one of the most effective works of feminist filmmaking ever. I think that um, genre allows people who normally wouldn't be able to understand the point of an other and allow themselves to get sucked into it. And
Yeah.
so through by recognizing the tension and the horror and juxtaposing it with the plight of a battered woman, the plight of a woman who no one believes,
Yeah.
that is, I think, so effective. And despite the stuff that goes on in Elizabeth Moss's personal life, because I'm definitely not going to comment on Scientology and all of that. I think that she chooses her roles so carefully and plays them masterfully. She is, I think, one of the greatest actresses working today. And she doesn't she's not really known, I think, too much for movies. It's really TV world that she's known for with
Right.
Mad Men and with Handmaid's Tale. But when you start looking at the fact that, every single thing that she's done, there's some sort of social commentary there. I think that she brings something to the table there. And I think that there's messaging that's coded in everything that she does. So the moment I saw that she was going to be in this, number one, I was sold because she's brilliant. But number two, I knew that there was going to be something more to this, more than just the mad scientist, which we got in that first Invisible Man, which I love so much. It's a fantastic movie and a feat of filmmaking. I've sung the praise of James Whale pretty much any chance that I get. I bring up James Whale. Guys was a fucking legend. But this is so much more than just the mad scientist, because I don't think that's the scariest aspect of this movie. The
Right.
scariest aspect of this movie is that he is occupying her head. It's not that he's there and she can't see him, because after a certain point, she's just talking to him.
Yeah.
Like if he is visible. And that to me was almost scarier than anything else, because he's occupying her head with such real estate that she's just screaming at him and she knows no one can see him, but he's so present and so real in her mind that it's impossible for her to believe that no one else can see him.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think was missing from just about every other Invisible Man movie that's been made. I've seen them all, and I love them all. And the cheesier they got, maybe the better they got, because they kind of leaned into that sort of camp. But this went the complete opposite direction.
Yes.
This went into the, like, yes, he's a mad scientist, a leader in the field of optics, but that's not what makes him scary. It's not the suit. It's the fact that I think the scariest thing that happens in this movie is when she's recounting the story of when she first considered running away, and that she doesn't say
Yes.
anything, and he just looks at her and says, "You'll never be away from me." To me, that's the real horror here. And then to know that stories like that exist every day, that there are people that you know, maybe even people you're very close to, that are experiencing stories like that. To me, that is why this movie is so brilliant, because it's pretty close to universal. And you know, I mean that as in, you know, Universal Studios, but also universal as in like everyone has a story like this. And beyond all of that, the time in which this came out, everyone understood what it was like to feel trapped, because we were trapped in our own homes.
Yeah.
We were physically, we were told, don't go out unless you need to. Don't socialize. Stay inside your home. And for people who were in abusive relationships, dude, that's the worst fucking thing that you can tell them.
Yeah.
So I think that there's so much in this movie that is beyond just, you know, mad scientist haunts woman. It's beyond all of that. And the story here is not just that it's possible for this to happen, but that it's also possible for you to feel like no one is there and no one has your back, because what he does is systematically destroy her life.
Yeah.
For me, I love the way this movie ends. And I feel like it's the only way for this movie to end. Because as much as I would have loved to have gotten another Invisible Man in this same vein, I love that this is start to finish its own thing.
Right.
Just before this, Universal had tried a hand at another shared universe, the Dark
Yeah, they were
Universe,
supposed to
they
make the
called it.
Dark Universe. Yeah.
Yeah, they did The Mummy. I didn't hate it, but
The Tom
it's
Cruise one.
the Tom Cruise one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but it is not what this is. It is nowhere near what this thing is. This thing as its own film, and I wish more filmmakers took note of this. Like, just make a good fucking movie.
Right.
Don't try to be the next Marvel. Don't try to reinvent the Universal monster, you know, universe the way that you did back in the 40s. Like, don't do that. Just make a good fucking movie. And when you give guys like Lee Wanell free range to just make their own fucking movies, I mean, look, now he's making a Wolfman.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, it looks like it's going to be fucking fantastic. Guillermo del Toro is doing a Frankenstein, and it looks like it's going to be spectacular. And I think that it all goes back to this, and also one that Universal let slip through its fingers, The Shape of Water. When you just want to do a good horror movie that says something, man, I'm going to be there every fucking time, and I'm going to buy multiple tickets and multiple buckets of popcorn.
Yeah. And you know, if the name Lee Wynell is slipping past some of y'all, this is the guy who wrote the movies that put James Wan on the map. Like, he wrote Saw. He wrote, I think, the first 3 Insidious movies. I think he wrote all 3 of them and directed the 3rd one, if I remember correctly. I mean, so yeah, this guy has been doing the damn thing for a minute, and he absolutely did. That whole concept of that's kind of, it's not even the undertones here. It's that message of, you know, believe women, right? That, you know, you see people wearing the shirts and stuff all the time. Like, this guy made an entire movie dedicated to that idea. I think that aspect of it, right? He didn't just stalk her because he wanted her back. Like, she keeps saying throughout the entire movie, she goes like, this is what he does. He isolates you. He makes you feel like you're the crazy one. You know, this was gaslighting the movie, right? It was a systematic breakdown of an individual in an attempt to regain control over them. And yeah, that's fucking terrifying. And the fact that who we get it from is this tech billionaire, who people are so often so ready to be like, they must be awesome because they've got all this money, like all those people who just stay on Elon Musk's dick, like he's ever done anything for any of them. If you're listening to this podcast, Elon Musk doesn't give a fuck about you. Like
Elon Musk doesn't know you exist.
Right. Yeah.
And doesn't want to.
And he doesn't want to. He has absolutely no inclination to. I mean, and that's who like this guy essentially was, right? He's just this tech guy who thinks that he owns the world because he's got all that money, and that he can do whatever he wants because he's got the money to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
You did mention the end though, and like I said, it's really ticky-tacky and it's nitpicky. While I think that the ending was spectacular in what happened with, her killing him and making it look like he committed suicide, it's all on camera. I love all of that. I think that was all perfectly done. My issue is I'm having a really hard time imagining that she could take off that skin tight suit, get her dress and heels back on, and her hair be perfect in that very small time window we have between his throat getting slit and her walking back out and freaking out when she sees him dying on the floor. And like I said, I know it's super nitpicky. It really is. I kept waiting for some sort of extra moment where we found out that she didn't go there alone, that somebody else was part of it, because that time window didn't line up for me. And so, like I said, it's not the biggest plot hole in the world. It's not a high tension. It's not a Barbarian Mary Sue type thing. It was just one little.
Do we know how long a period of time it is? Because there is camera footage, like security camera footage.
Yeah, there is security camera footage, and you can and the camera footage has timestamps, and I don't know the exact amount.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem, but like when you look at the timestamps, they're pretty close. And like I said, when she comes back out, I mean, if she had just been wearing, like I said, this skin tight suit that she could not have had her dress on underneath, and that she would have had to completely hide her hair in, for her to come back out wearing this tight black dress, heels, and her hair still look exactly the same, that bothered me a little bit. And I'm not normally like I said, just that nitpicky. But in that moment, it kind of bothered me. The only other nitpicky thing that I have is, for a cop, especially a homicide detective, this man did not believe in any form of home security. Like he had, it was like, this guy apparently routinely had unlocked doors, just easy access in and out of his home. Like, I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Like I said, they're super nitpicky things
but I don't think anyone ever came in from outside the house.
At the end, when his daughter is asleep and he's running from the asylum after their encounter in the asylum, he literally just walks up to an exterior door to the house and turns the knob and walks in. Like, you'd think a cop's daughter, a homicide detective's daughter, would at least lock the doors when she went to bed. But I don't know. She's like,
you'd think, but she's a teenager.
But she is an 18-year-old, right?
And everything else that happens in the house, it's implied that he was already in the house.
That is very true. Like I said, it is minutely nitpicky, but I just kept thinking that. I was like, man, this guy's got just no concern for home security, really. But yeah, you're right. She was home by herself.
He also did just move into the house, so they're still getting it ready.
Good point. They are doing a reno to the house. So yeah. So that part, okay. So I'll give you that one.
I also think that going back to your first point, I think it would be much harder to put on a skin tight suit than to take off a skin tight suit.
And that's
I don't know that it would really take that long. I get undressed rather quickly. Even if I've been in the pool and I've got like one of those rash guards that stick to you,
yeah.
right? And a bathing suit that's just way too tight in all the wrong places, right? Um, that stuff comes off very quickly.
That now you're not wrong there.
I don't think it would take her too long to take that off and put the dress back on. Because she doesn't need to zip the dress up all the way either. She just needs to slip into it because it's never going to be seen from the back.
Okay.
She
See?
just needs to come back out. And I mean, as far as the hair goes, the hair's done, but I mean, she shouldn't have any like fancy curls or anything that I think would be.
That is true. It is just kind of down.
It's just down. I'm going to call that too nitpicky. On both instances. I mean,
I have one more.
Fair game. Fair game.
And I have one more. One more. So this movie came out in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
It takes place around a tech billionaire who has created this technology of all these cameras, creating an invisible suit. So we're to believe that this is happening in a modern time, right? Like it's happening in 2020, like as we're watching it, right? 2019, because we were all shut down, whatever. The idea that in 2019, you could be in a restaurant and not have every table on camera, where they could have gone and reviewed the footage to see that moment where the knife is just floating there in air before her sister's throat gets slit. Like if that had happened in the bar that I work in, we'd have 5 camera angles of that table and be able to zoom in and see that at one point that knife was just floating right there, because it did float there long enough that the sister saw it and acknowledged it, and we got to see it before it then sliced her throat and flew into her hand. That is my biggest one, because I can't for a second imagine that the police weren't like, we need the footage of what happened. Like, we can't just take, it's just a bunch of eyewitness accounts that this woman slashed her sister's throat. Like, the idea that this restaurant that was very, very upscale, like he's explaining, all the waiters are wearing the exact same thing. And he was like, oh, well, we're a little fancy here and we do it XYZ. The idea that there wasn't one camera to show what happened at that table, and that they all just had to take this secondhand account of people turning and seeing the knife in her hand and her sister's throat slit. That one, I think, is the one plot hole that I'm having a really hard time forgiving.
I don't know that I'd call it a plot hole, but I do think that that's I think that's a legitimate one, because most restaurants do have security cameras. Now, I don't know that restaurants tend to have security cameras all over the restaurant. When I worked as a waiter, we had security cameras like front of house, like wherever someone came in, greet the host or the hostess. At the bar, because there's a cash register there,
right?
And then at to go, where again there was a cash register. Otherwise, I don't recall seeing many cameras. I think most of the restaurants that we visit don't either, but I'm also not hyper aware of it. So I don't know, and that's also the sort of thing that if today, right? Let's say 10 years ago, you probably would have had that stuff saved on hard drives.
Right.
Today, that stuff will be on a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to subpoena the security company to get the footage. It's not going to be immediate, right? So she would have been arrested regardless.
Right. And that's
she
true.
would have been arrested.
I
don't think that anything changes. Nothing changes, except that at some point between when she is taken to the mental hospital, right? And where she escapes, someone would have found out. Now, here's the other thing. Because, and this is why I don't consider it a plot hole, because both, what is it, Adrian, right?
Adrian's the Invisible Man is Adrian.
Right. So both Adrian and his brother are in on this. Very easily, they can just wipe whatever tape is there.
Yeah, no, and
and
that's true.
I think that ultimately is why it doesn't matter whether there was footage. And I think when you have a movie that's got a runtime of 2 hours, like, you got to start thinking, where am I making cuts? Where am I focusing?
And you've got a very good point there, because you're right. We never see her go to trial, right? We never see, we just see her. You're right. She would have been arrested. And in any situation, the person holding the knife, when the person across from them with their throat is slit, that person's getting arrested. The timetable between that and everything that happens at the mental hospital does seem to be very short. She gets there, they sedate her, and then it only seems to be a couple of days.
Next day. Next day maybe is when she meets with
things
Tom.
happen. And so like I said, all of them, maybe plot holes is the wrong word, right? They're just kind of little nitpicky things that
quibbles.
Yes, that in no way took away from the movie. They were just quirky little things that I was kind of like, I will say, though, I mentioned earlier that it avoided one thing that I was really hoping it would avoid. And I'm so glad when we found out there was a second suit, I'm watching this with my roommate and I go, I swear to God, if she puts that suit on and there's a fight that's just like stuff breaking over nothing, I'm going to be so pissed off. And so they didn't do that to me. So thank you.
Yeah.
They kind of check off Gunby with a few things there. The fire extinguisher at the beginning, finding out there's the second suit. That stuff all works. But when she found that second suit, there was a serious moment where I was like, this had better not become an invisible on invisible fight, because there's nothing exciting about that. Whereas I did love how frantic it was to watch someone fight the Invisible Man. Aldous Hodge is not a small man, and there were no questions about whether or not he was a small man. It's like, look at this just onyx god in a wife beater. Like, this guy can beat anybody's ass. And then watching him just get absolutely decimated by something that he couldn't see. The first time when he's fighting, when Cecilia's fighting him in the house, and you get a really fun and interesting take on your normal final girl versus big bad, right? Where she's just breaking plates over his head and stuff, and all of that was really good. But then, to see him just absolutely dominate, what was his name? James. James was his name in the movie.
Yeah.
To see Adrian, or we find out it was actually Tom, but to find out the Invisible Man just absolutely waylay him I loved the way that they did that. Like, it never felt super cheesy or hacky. Like, even when she's just getting slung all over, it makes sense. Elizabeth Moss, not that big. We were the little bit of, we saw this guy punch through a car window. He's obviously, when angry, very strong.
Well, and Oliver Jackson Cohen is not a little dude. Like, that's a big guy.
Yeah. So, I will credit where credit's due. They avoided one super cheesy thing that I thought they might do, and instead gave me a couple of really good showdowns with the Invisible Man. Loved that. But man, that moment when she's in the attic, she's discovered the phone, there's the knife in the bag, you're trying to figure out, like, what is going on. Like, obviously this guy is here. And she creeps out and she's looking down at the ladder, and then just suddenly grabs that paint and throws it, and you just see that bizarre, like, hexagonal outline of his head. Oh man, what an amazing monster reveal for that to be the first thing that we see, and then for it to be over just that quick. That was genius. I love that. Scared the shit out of me. I expected him to, like, be down there, or like messing with the ladder. But I mean, he was 18 inches from her face when she threw that paint, and that scared the hell out of me.
And again shows how brazen he is. That for him, he lives in her head. So to be outside of it at all is almost too far for him. Like he needs to be in close. He needs to know that she is frightened. You're right, man. This movie is so scary.
Yeah.
And even things that shouldn't be scary, like the grease fire in the kitchen. That's one of those things where it's like, man, we've all done that. We're like, we walk away from the stove for a second to do something, anything. Sometimes we don't even walk away and it just fucking happens.
It
You're
just
like,
happens.
oh shit, and you know what to do, right? And thankfully, shit, what was her name?
Sid.
Sydney. Yeah, Sid's like, whoa, what are you doing with the fucking water, man? Like, you put this thing out with, you got to suffocate it. But that's like, this guy from the very beginning came to play. Like he pulled no punches. And I love that this story is about more than just, here's a crazy dude who made himself invisible. It really is, here's a crazy dude who made himself invisible and will not stop until you are his.
Yeah. Like, just you're talking about things that shouldn't be that scary, but are. The idea of, when he sends that email to her sister, and we see that her sister seems to be the only family she has, right? We're never led to believe there's anyone else because she's close enough with James and Sydney that she's given his daughter $10,000 a month out of this money.
Right.
It doesn't seem like she has any other family. It's so diabolical to surgically remove the one family member you have. And then the way when he decks Sydney and it goes on her, and so just slowly, just like I said, just surgically removing her very small support network.
Yeah.
That's scary. Like that's the type of shit that people like us, I'm assuming like you as well, who have never been that close to any sort of like extreme domestic violence situation, don't realize happens. That like that people go that far to isolate you. Like she kept pointing out, and she knew the entire time, every step of the way, she knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah. And no one believed her.
And no one believed her. Just watching everyone around her. Like, I can't imagine what would go through my head if one of my best friends was in a room with what I thought was alone with my daughter, and my daughter got punched in the face. Right? Because I can't put myself in the mindset of, do I automatically like believe you when you say you didn't do it? Because that's a lot of mental gymnastics in that situation, right? I'm seeing two people in the room, and I'm seeing my daughter who just got hit in the face.
And the daughter saying she did it.
Right. And
more than that, it's not I got hit, it's she hit me.
Yeah. And so it's like, so it's easy to be like, oh, well, she's his friend. He should have believed her. It's easy to say that. But when you take a step back and you really look at it, it's like, is it that easy to just believe? Because again, if we're on that believe women train, right? That's your daughter, and she says she punched me in the face. My daughter's word over a friend's word 100% of the time. Yeah. So that type of stuff that really shows you how freakishly evil Adrian was. While all under the guise of, tech billionaire saving the world, doing whatever, it blows me away. It absolutely blows me away how scary this movie was. Without, I mean, there's a couple of gory moments, but it was terrifying from beginning to end. I mean, this movie opens with her silently trying to escape. It is tense and scary from
From the
the
start, yeah.
beginning.
Mhm.
This movie is relentlessly scary until the moment that she walks out of the house and has that conversation with James. Everything that happens between between the waves crashing up on that rock and saying the invisible man and him saying it sounds to me a lot like he killed himself.
Mhm.
Everything between those two moments is scary, and that's a rare thing to find.
Yeah. It really is. One of my best friends was in a relationship like that for many years. And we did not know. Like that's how I think realistic this movie is, that we all have people like this in our lives who are dealing with that sort of abuse and that sort of control, and we don't know.
Right.
Because had my friend not told me that that was the sort of relationship that they had, um, after the whole thing imploded, I never would have known. I never would have known. And then so much about what had happened between our own friendship made so much more sense afterward. And there was almost like a reconciliation of sort, because neither of us knew that the partner had been orchestrating this like mass exodus of everyone from from their lives.
Right.
So it's sad really when you start thinking about it, that this stuff is so real. Um but that is what makes it, I think, such an effective horror movie, because if you're, I hate to sound cheesy, but if you're learning something, it's better.
Yeah.
It's better than just being scared.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've dropped a lot of these people's names. I mean, we've talked about them. So let's dive into these characters. So in a section that we're calling "The World as We See It," let's talk about the people that we can see when we watch this movie. Let's
Mhm.
start there. I mean, who stands out for you?
Listen, I oftentimes try not to talk about the star of a movie because it's pretty obvious.
Right.
I do like to focus on like the smaller roles, um, but I have to talk about Elizabeth Moss.
Of course.
I mean, this is the thing is they're all the performance of a lifetime when it comes to Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah.
Like she's so uniquely talented. There's something on her face that makes her immediately feel wounded. There's a sadness that she's able to compel, but then also like a strength that she's able to show all at once. It's I don't understand how it's possible to seem so fragile and so strong at the same time. And she does this in a lot of her roles,
Yes.
where there's just a little bit of that, like, I feel sorry for her, but then also like, bro, you're fucking badass, all wrapped up into one performance. It's amazing. I think that she gives us such an incredible uh development as well, because you can write character development, but if you don't have the right actor to show that growth, what
Right.
good is the writing? And 1L wrote this as well, so this is definitely like his vision, but brought to life by Elizabeth Moss. Cecilia, I think, is the ultimate final girl,
Yeah.
because there is, I mean, I can't think of any one final girl that has the growth that she does. Let me not say that, because Sarah Connor's pretty close. If,
Fair.
if not on that level. Um, but I think that's the only one. Because Ellen Ripley I'll give you Ellen
I was
Ripley
about to
also.
say,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw Ellen Ripley in there, but you beat me to it.
Ellen Ripley, Sarah Connor, Cecilia Cass. Like that's and I know that it kind of seems like, whoa, these are like two like legendary final girls. Like who like far surpass the moniker of final girl. Like there's so much more than just a final girl. Like you think Alice from Friday the 13th when you think of a final girl. But that is the role, the stereotype that she's filling in this. But oh my god, when she is in the insane asylum and she is shouting at the top of her lungs that he's there, and she's not even talking to the orderlies, she's just talking to him. Like, wow, man. Like the first time I saw this, I was like, I don't know how she's going to get out of this, but I do know that she's going to get out of this and that he's going to pay.
Yeah.
There was that moment because the shock had worn off. What we see from her in the restaurant is shock. Like, my sister's fucking dead. And I know he did it. I don't know how he did it, but I know that he did it. Damn, man. There is so much in this performance. I love Elizabeth Moss as an actress. I can't speak to the personal life because I think Scientology is one of those things where like I just don't get it.
Right.
But wow, man. Fucking wow.
Yeah, there was there's always this like handful of actors and actresses, right, that when you find out what kind of role, they're always the one, in the early 2000s, if it was a female action role, you knew it was going to Angelina Jolie. Right now we've reached that, then when she kind of faded into the background a little bit, Scarlett Johansson stepped into that spot.
Mm-hmm.
What we have out of Elizabeth Moss is every time there is the role of like a downtrodden woman who is going to learn her own strength, right? Like that seems like super niche, but that's what I mean. Mad Men, Handmaid's Tale, this one. I mean, in each one of those, that's what it is. It's this.
Us might be the only one that's different.
There we go. Yes, that one is different.
She's very funny in that one.
Yes. But she's in these roles where you're right. There is an absolute fragility to everything that she is. And then we watch her become a badass.
Yeah.
We watch her establish herself and her will be done. Like we watch that happen as she plays out these different roles. So you could not have I cannot. I mean, even without seeing this, but no, if I had known what it was about, I would have already told you couldn't have cast anybody better. But now that I've seen it and I've seen her portray this, there is a 0% chance that there is anybody else I would want in this role. She was incredible in it. Like that moment when she shows up to her sister's house after her sister's gotten the email, and she is genuinely just as confused as everyone because she has no info as to what's happening. Just that look of terror and sadness and of just breaking on screen as her sister tells her all of these horrible things that she said to her. It was, I mean, it tore my heart out to watch her in that scene when she finally, builds the courage to go check the mail and just hears the footsteps of the guy out for a jog and just total panic attack moment and sprints back inside the door and she's panting. I felt for her. Like I've never known like being so afraid of someone or something that every little sound could set me off like that. But in that moment, I felt like I knew kind of exactly what it was like because her performance was just that powerful. It really did give off every bit of every tiny aspect of that character in what 2 hours and 4 minutes or whatever that
Yeah.
this movie plays out. Cecilia is created as such an incredibly round out character without ever having to get a ton of explanation as to what her life was like before Adrian.
Mhm.
We get the one quick kind of, understanding of how abusive their relationship was, kind of, but then we watch the rest of it play out and we have to live this horror with her. And you're right, that's what makes it so scary. Her performance in selling all of that is amazing.
Mhm.
I'm going to go to Aldous Hodge as Detective James Lanier.
Yeah.
He's so good. Look, first and foremost, if nothing on this podcast, we are gender neutral in our appreciation of beautiful people. Aldous Hodge
Yes.
is a special kind of gorgeous.
An Adonis. He was misnamed when he was born. Not Aldous. It should be Adonis.
I thought I was like Freudian slip when I typed his name to send a message to Hunger about it. Typed Aldonis because I was like, that's got to be his name, right? So one dude is just incredibly beautiful. Just like I said, an onyx god on this earth.
Mhm.
But his portrayal of this cop who is trying to help his friend, single dad, trying to take care of his daughter, always trying to do what's best. But when he gets stuck in the middle of having to figure out whether or not he believes her, his entire performance kind of shifts on its axis. And we start getting this really torn version of him from the moment when Sydney gets punched to when he's sitting there in the room when they're talking to her about the murder, and you see it in his face. He's trying to figure out whether or not he believes her at this time. We see him go from this really fatherly figure to both Sydney and Celia. And just somebody who's trying to protect, somebody who's trying to do, the reason that people become cops, right? To serve and protect. We see him trying to do that in his personal life, in his professional life, to this guy who's really ripped up inside about what is going on and who he should be supporting. Because you can see it in him. He desperately wants to believe her. He wants to believe that she didn't hit Sydney, that she didn't kill her sister. But he's also a cop. And he's looking at facts. He's looking at evidence. He's looking at what he has in front of him, what he can see, touch, smell, and hear. And those things are telling a very different story than somebody that he seems to trust beyond all doubt. And Aldous Hodge did such an amazing job portraying that evolution of a character down to the end, when you can see he knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that he just sat there and listened to Celia murder Adrian.
Yeah.
He's 100% sure. And when he shows up, there's that moment where you're like, is he going to be a cop or is he going to be a friend who sees the justice that was just delivered? And you read every single bit of that on his face before he finally just says, sounds to me like he just committed suicide. And you're like, oh shit, being a friend and a good human being won out.
Yeah.
And he, in that moment, was so perfect. I again, just like you said, so many of them are performances of a lifetime. And he was amazing in this. He was so good.
That final line, I'm going to say something and it's going to sound ridiculous because the movie I'm referencing is quite literally one of the most iconic movies of all time. It's one of the most iconic final lines of any movie. And yet I believe firmly that in 20 years, 30 years, people are going to be reflecting back on it and saying that that final line sounds to me like he committed suicide is at the same level. It's the same caliber, both in writing and delivery as "Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown." What the fuck, man? That is the perfect ending, the perfect line. That it is. I will come back to this. All right, Alexa, remind me in 20 years to come back and check this. Okay, Louis, I think this is the start of a beautiful friendship. It's that fucking good. All right, this line and its delivery is fucking masterful.
It really is.
And it's only possible with this cast, man, because like I said, Wanell can fucking write. We've known that. We've known that he can write. You watch that first Saw and you think anything other than, wow, this is one of the best written movies I've ever seen. I can't fucking help you. We can't be friends, number one. All right. So fuck right off. Get the fuck off my property. All right. And number two, like, you're just fucking wrong. He can write. All right. Wanell can write and he can direct. But man, he knows how to fucking cast too, man, because that line, fucking Adonis, comes in and he just blows that shit out of the water. There's so much steely strength in him. And yet he also has a gentleness to him.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. What he does in this movie, I think, is equal to what Elizabeth Moss does. He's just obviously not the star. He's a supporting character, but it is on that level. Fuck me, he is so perfect in this movie. Also, really, like just fuck me, dude.
Yeah,
like,
but also just, I mean, let's just lay the cards on the table here. I mean, come on now.
All right, so the last person I'll mention is Tom Griffin, or Michael Dorman as Tom Griffin, the brother. Right? He is such a fucking skis, dude.
Yes.
And the thing is that you want to believe him when he tells the story about how his brother controlled him. And you want to believe that still when they go back to Adrian and Adrian is like, no, he did it to me. He was the controlling one. Like, in your head, like, no, man, you probably forced him to do this. I don't know how you did. But then there's also was it a scream? Like, were they both in on it together?
Right.
Like, he seems pretty upset about giving any amount of money away to anyone.
Yes.
In that first scene where we meet him. The way that he speaks about how women wanted to get close to his brother for the money. This guy is not like Adrian. He's just not. But there is something sinister to him from that first scene that we see him in.
Right.
And you want to believe him. Okay, you're a victim just like everyone else is. But then when he finally is like, this could all go away.
Oh my fucking God.
Wow, man. I mean, that is another really amazing scene. Because you don't know which way that's going to go. You know that she's not going to actually accept those terms.
Right.
But in your head, you're thinking, will she accept it to get out of this situation and then figure things out? What an amazing scene. And like, he commands that scene. That is his scene. And again, to Elizabeth Moss's credit, like she doesn't chew up scenery. She also doesn't hog the camera. She knows when to kind of sit back and to let someone else command a scene. And he does such a spectacular job of being the right-hand man, being the henchman.
Yeah.
Right? Because every mad scientist needs his henchman.
Right, needs a goon.
He needs a goon. He needs the hunchback to be there and, yes, master. He needs that, and that's the role that he fills here. And in a lot of ways, he's even physically the hunchback, because he's not as good looking as his older brother. He's not as smart as his older brother. He's the errand boy,
Yeah.
and he just really plays that role so well. I man, I really wish I could talk about all the fucking actors in this movie.
I know, dude. He's so slimy, man. And yeah, that scene in like the visiting room of the mental hospital. And first, I mean, yes, one, his performance in it, yeah, when he just kind of when he leans in and he's like, keep the baby, go back to Adrian, and this all goes away. But then again, going back to just how fucking good Lee Wanell is with this, man, that really tight shot of just him putting his phone up on the table, you know, like this, you know, this is your lifeline. This is your chance right here. This is your only opportunity. And it's just, it's like, it's a super, super tight shot of just his phone coming up onto the table. And you just kind of watch his finger tap down on it. That dude was such a slime bag.
Yeah.
And I couldn't in that moment, and I even like right before he said that, I looked at my roommate and I was like, all right, hey, I was like, if you don't want me to do the thing where I say something I think that might ruin it, then I won't talk. He's like, no, it's fine. I was like, all right. I was like, I've been waiting this whole movie for it to turn out that it's actually him and that by getting her convicted of these crimes, he gets all the money or something. And so, but then when he said that, I did the same thing. I was like, is it a scream? Are there two of them? Is that how this works? And so, but God, dude, he was so gross. He was so gross. And the way that he got her to buy in with that story about, you know, he was controlling me long before he was controlling you and all that. And you start to be like, maybe not, but also this guy just seems like an asshole.
Right.
And you know, you never fully bought in, but God, man, that visiting room scene, it was gross. Like that wasn't even scary. That was just like you felt icky afterwards, right? Like I'm 41. I don't
right term.
Right. Yeah. I'm 41. I don't use the phrase get the ick, but if I did, I would apply it to this moment. Right. Like it was that moment where I was like, oh, I hate this guy. Like I didn't like, I wasn't sure how I felt about him before, but now I definitely hate him. This dude grosses me out like to the nth degree. And so, I mean, he did an amazing job. And Elizabeth Moss summed it up perfectly. You know, you're just the jellyfish version of him, you know, him with the shell of him without the spine. And
what a great diss, dude. You're just the jellyfish version of him.
So good, man. Again, just God, man, this movie is it is so well written.
Yeah.
Like I said, even my little nitpicky things, now that I'm sitting here like talking about it and how good some of these fucking lines were, it really was. Everybody did an absolutely amazing job. But there is one more person we've got to get to.
Oh, yes.
And so we talked at the beginning of this month about how the plan was to finally getting around to doing some classics. So in a section that we were going to call Classics Never Die all month, let's talk about The Invisible Man as presented here in 2020. How does he stand up as a horror movie monster to you?
The first time that I saw this, I wondered exactly that. Was he, like, as the Invisible Man, as imposing, as scary as Claude Rains was in the original? And I stopped trying to compare them.
Right.
Because every time I tried to compare Cohen to Rains, I ended up on the fact that these are entirely different Invisible Men. One is a menace to society,
right,
and the other is a menace to Cecilia,
right.
And those are so different. And like even the commentary in the movies is so different. I think that for this version of The Invisible Man, there is no better way to have done it, because the lack of Invisible Man, which I know is what, if anyone does have an issue with The Invisible Man, it might be that there is a lack of the Invisible Man. And obviously he's invisible, you can't see him, but in previous versions of the Invisible Man, they always dressed him up so that you could see some part of him. And he had a much more not important, much more present role, physically present role in the movie. The thing is that the lack of a physical presence does not take away his presence in the movie. And he is literally present in every scene of the movie, whether you see him or you don't see him. He is there because he is existing inside of Cecilia's head. And he's existing inside our head too, because I don't think anyone in the audience actually believed that she was insane.
Right.
We questioned whether it's a possibility. But even if that was a possibility, does he not still occupy real estate in her mind? He's living in her mind rent free. And that is what makes him the perfect Invisible Man for this story. There's no way I would have done this differently. If you want to look at the physical Invisible Man, I think that that look of that suit is terrifying.
Yes.
It's the sort of thing that nightmares are made of. When we did that movie, The Night House, a couple years ago, like where it's like, what the fuck is that thing? It's a shadow creature, right?
Yeah.
You have monster designs that are terrifying to look at because of how hideous they are. Things like the Bughuul from Sinister,
Yeah.
right?
The Babadook.
The Babadook, the demon from Insidious. Like these are horrifying creatures. And then you have ones that are just strange, that stick out at you, and you're like, I shouldn't be afraid of this thing, because it is effectively just a morph suit.
Right.
But also, let me make sure I say this correctly. Trypophobia.
Oh, when you're afraid
Are you familiar with this?
When you're afraid of like things with holes in them.
When you're
right?
afraid
Like looking
of
at
things
like a
with holes.
honeycomb freaks you out.
Yes. So that is, I don't know if it's a common phobia, but it is one that people are aware of. I don't know that I have trypophobia, but it definitely makes me uncomfortable. Like holes in flesh make me uncomfortable. Like there are certain fruits where I'm like, nah, no, thank you. And they're probably delicious, but that's kind of how I feel, because it's like something is missing, something is not there. And I think that to design a suit that triggers trypophobia is to, again, engage with what the Invisible Man is. He's the thing that's not there. And his suit is made up of things that are not there. And he's constantly occupying space that is not there. And he's existing in a thing that doesn't exist, because the brain exists, but the mind does not really exist. But that's where he lives, is in the mind. Everything about the design of this suit is as brilliant as the writing, is as brilliant as the directing, is as brilliant as the acting. I will sing the praises of this Invisible Man and the Invisible Man in this Invisible Man until the day I die. I think that this is one of the most singularly perfect horror movies ever made. I put it on the level of Hereditary, and I think that with enough time, the rest of the world will agree.
Yeah. When I think about this Invisible Man, so one thing that got me that that was so fucking good about those moments when, like you said, is he there? Is he not there? He's always there, right? But there was something about this movie that really made my skin crawl. And that was when it would be perfectly silent and Cecilia would be by herself. And there would be this really minute little clicking sound.
Mm.
And it was reminiscent of like hearing the predator breathe. Right. It's reminiscent of all those things. It's the sound of Freddy's gloves scraping before you can see him. Right. It's those little sounds that just haunt you. And it was just, and for the longest time, I kept trying to, I was like, is that an intentional sound? Is that something? And then, so then when we finally see the suit and you get that sound as the cameras are moving, you were like, I was like, holy shit. I'm not crazy. I was hearing this little tiny clicking sound all the fucking time. I think that for all of the reasons that you said, that he's absolutely horrifying. Even if you kind of separate Adrian and the Invisible Man for just a moment, individually, they're both horrifying characters.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that they are one and the same is just nightmarishly terrifying. Knowing that underneath this scary ass costume, that underneath this presence that you can't see, that's always there, is this devious, despicable, just absolutely evil human being. See, that's one of the things whenever we talk about monsters, and we always talk about what they make us realize about ourselves because they're outside of being human and they make you realize XYZ about being human. What's put in front of us and what we're made to face here is that, sometimes just fucking people suck. Right. This becomes one of those moments where you sit back and go, huh, man's the monster, huh? Like there's
Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. It's one of those things where that has to be the takeaway, right? It shows that money and power in the hands of the wrong people is the worst fucking thing in the world. Not that we're not living that every goddamn day, but when we have to see it like this, and we have to see somebody who is indiscriminately evil, right? There are no party lines to be drawn here about whether or not Adrian is a good dude. There's I don't want to meet the guy who's sitting back and being like, but I mean, like I don't want to meet.
But he gave her a nice house.
Yeah, I mean, look at the life she was living. You know what? Yeah, fuck that guy. I don't need that moment. Like sometimes, we've praised the movies occasionally for being like, who is the bad guy? Who, blah, blah, blah. No, in this one, it's just like, that dude sucks. Mm-hmm. And everything he does sucks. And the fact that he's rich and powerful has just led him to feel entitled to suck. And you're really just faced with this idea of how close to true evil the real world can actually be without having to go to some country where the news is constantly telling us that there's a person over there that's evil, right? It's like, no, this is just a dude in San Francisco with too much fucking money and problems with control.
Yeah.
And so I think you're absolutely right in the fact that this version of The Invisible Man. I think it tops out over, like I said, my only other one to compare it to is the literary Claude Rains and Hollow Man. But
Yeah.
I do think that all three of them are distinctly very different in what makes them scary and or bad. And that this guy just kind of checks every single damn box. And that idea that not seeing him takes away from the movie is absurd to me.
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea that if we'd seen him more, it would have been scarier. No. Not knowing if he's in that corner or directly above her. As we've seen, he can get inches from her. You know, when we see that breath on the front porch, she just happens to be looking the wrong way, but that bad boy blows right past her face. I mean, he was on top of her. Like, the fact that he's that close, I don't need to see him. I need to always imagine that he could be that close. So, no, not for a second can I imagine seeing him more adding to the movie. I think that when we saw him, it was perfect. I think that whatever his screen time was for physically being there was 100% on the nose for how they had to do it. And again, man, Wanell, dude, just every element of this knocked it all the way out of the park. I really, really did love this movie.
Well, sounds like we both did, which means that our rating, which is all we've got left to do, is probably not going to be terribly surprising for people. So something that we do here, which if you are a first-time viewer or listener, might seem surprising to you. If you're a long-time viewer or listener, it's going to be old hat at this point. But what isn't old hat is what we're actually using to rate the movie. We use a different metric for every movie because every movie should be judged and rated against itself and not another movie. So we've mentioned other Invisible Man movies. We're not comparing this. We're not comparing it to other Universal Monster movies or indeed any movie at all. This is not being compared to the Care Bears movie. It is not being compared to Avengers Endgame. It's not being compared to anything except itself. So we discussed this at before we started. And taking, I think, maybe one of the most iconic lines from the movie, Daniel, out of a possible 5 surprises, how many surprises do you give this movie?
So I will say I didn't think I thought I was going to be just below this before we started talking, but now kind of airing my few grievances, realizing that 2 of them were too nitpicky and one of them we just don't get the timetable allowed for it to play out. I think I see where you're going to go with it, and I'm not going to quite get to where I believe you are going to be. However, I am going to solidly sit at 5 surprises for this movie. It scared the shit out of me. Everybody gave a stellar performance. Writing, directing, just every bit of it was so fucking good that you know, a month from now, a friend of mine who or somebody might be like, well, you talk so great about it, like now I want to see it. I may watch it again and I may bump it up into that upper echelon of movies, but I'm not quite there yet. Only one viewing of it and 24 hours removed. So I am going to go 5 out of 5 surprises on this one.
And I think that having seen it once, that's probably where you should be. That is where I was when I first saw this movie back in 2020. And the more I thought about the movie, the more I discussed the movie with other people, and then the more I watched the movie, that opinion grew. So I was where you were. I didn't nitpick like that, but
we all have our moments.
Which is odd because I can be terribly nitpicky when I want to be. But yeah, for me, it's 6, man. I mean, this movie, if you couldn't tell that I was just jerking Lee Wanell off this entire fucking time. Wow, man, this movie is just fucking perfect. I adore this movie. I think that the best way to state it is the way I stated it before. I think that this is in the top 10 best horror movies of the last 10 years. I might even put it in the top 5. I aside from like Ari Aster's films, I really can't think of another that I would say is on this level. So for me, this thing is beyond perfect. It is a perfecter movie than the perfect movies that we've done in the past. It's just it is a work of art. It is beautiful. It is sad. It is informative. It is everything you want and don't want out of a movie because it's so much more than just a horror movie.
Yeah. So there you have it. We're gonna sit solidly at a 5.5
Yep.
as surprises as a podcast. I mean, it's damn near as good as it gets, right? This movie's
Mhm.
incredible. If you've listened to us and you haven't checked it out and we haven't sold you on it, then nothing will. Right. I mean, we've given it to you. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you to everybody who's hung around and listened to us. Make sure you head to shiverpod.com where you can find links to all of our social media. We are most active on Instagram, but we are on all of those places at shiverpod. We're sorry for the break, but we are back now. We are going to continue classics. We're going to get a little goofier, a little bit more family friendly. We're going to bring on a previous friend of the show, hopefully next week, as we do Sleepy Hollow the night before Halloween. So if you've got nothing going on what is that, Demon Night or whatever, the night before Halloween, come join us. Should be a really fun one. Who doesn't love a little Johnny Depp? Right? I just watched Sweeney Todd the other day.
So good.
It really is. It's incredible. Also, it had been so long. Just sidebar as we finish up here. I had forgotten how goddamn gory Sweeney Todd was. Like I knew it, but I had forgotten just how much blood there is in Sweeney Todd until I rewatched that the other day. So anyway, make sure you head to wherever you get your podcast. If you like us, it would be huge for us if you could give us a share. Find an episode you like, recommend it to somebody, see if you can throw us a follow, get somebody to listen. We'd greatly appreciate that. I'm also still sitting on a stack of stickers. If anybody wants to paint their town with those, shoot us a DM with your address, and I will make sure to get you some of these Shiver stickers. So we appreciate each and every one of y'all.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.